I'm Paul, Once Upon a Time Stories from Leicester Library's Neighbourhood Services. And the story I want to share with you is called The Greatest Army in the World. Now, this army was the fiercest, the strongest, the scariest army that you can imagine. Led by a general called Ironhead. Ironhead, clothed in armour, with a big helmet, armour all over his body, armour that could never be pierced by arrow, sword, stone, spear. Nothing could damage him, nothing could hurt him. And that wasn't all. He also had a mighty axe, and with this axe he could chop through wood. He could chop through metal. He could chop through stone if he wanted. One blow and he could chop straight through. So Ironhead and his mighty army could never be defeated. And he marched over many lands, and he burned castles, and he stole treasure from every place he went. One day, Ironhead and his army were marching through a forest. They had been marching for many days, and they were getting tired and a bit bored. They wanted some action. They wanted some fighting. They wanted some treasure. In the middle of the forest, they found an old woodcutter's shed, made out of wood, made out of trees, a bit knocked about. Not much of a hut. And standing in front of it was the woodcutter himself with his broken down old axe. When Ironhead saw him, he pointed to the shed and he said, "Burn it down and steal all his treasure." Woodcutter said, "Treasure? Me? I've got nothing. My little old shed, my broken down axe. I've got no treasure. I've got a bit of fruit, I've got a few nuts, but I've got no treasure for you." "Oh, well," said Ironhead, "doesn't matter. We'll burn it down anyway, and we can warm ourselves in front of the fire." Woodcutter said, wait 1 minute. "I do know, though, where there is a great castle, defended by the greatest army of the world, full of treasure. Now that would be a place for you to go." Said Ironhead. "Greatest army in the world? I've got the greatest army in the world. You tell me where this is, and I'll do you a deal. I will march through the forest and burn this castle down. If I don't, you can have my magic axe." So the woodcutter said, "You march for 7 days and 7 nights through the forest, and you will come to this castle, and maybe you will defeat the great army that defends it." "I will," said Ironhead. "You wait 7 days and 7 nights. You look up at the sky and you'll see the smoke and the fire of me burning down the castle and stealing the treasure too." So he left the woodcutter and he marched his army through the forest for 7 days and 7 nights. As they came out of the forest, they saw the castle. It was big. It was enormous, and it was unlike any other castle that Ironhead had ever seen. There were turrets and towers of mud. No battlements, no doors, no windows, just towers of mud reaching up into the sky. Thought Ironhead, "well, it's big, but I don't see any army to scare me." So he ordered his men to fire their flaming arrows and burn the castle down. So they picked up their bows and they fired and they fired and they fired hundreds, thousands of flaming arrows at the castle. But it was made of mud, so it didn't burn. "Okay," said Ironhead, "I can't burn you out. In that case, we'll bash a hole in and we'll go in and defeat you ourselves." So with his mighty axe, he chopped down the tallest tree that he could find. And he got his 20 strongest knights to lift up that trunk and bash and bash and bash and bash a great hole in the side of the castle. When the hole was big enough, Ironhead called out again, "Come out and fight! I have the greatest army in the world, and I come to steal all your treasure." And he waited. And he waited, and nothing happened. Not a sight or a sound of anyone. "Okay," he said, "if that's the way you want it, I'll come in myself." And marching forward, waving his great axe in the air, he went into the hole in the wall of the castle. And he went further in. He saw nothing. It got dark. It got gloomy. It got hot. And he looked around and he waved his axe, but he could see no soldiers. He could see not a sight or a sound of the greatest army. And then he stopped, because he felt a funny, itchy, tickling feeling on his shoulders, and a funny, itchy, tickling feeling at the bottom of his back. And it started to move on to the next shoulder, and then at the bottom of his back, and then all round him. And then he looked down. On the ground were little black ants, crawling around, round and round his feet, crawling up his legs and in through the cracks of his armour. Now, he might have the strongest, brightest armour ever, but armour has little cracks where it joins together. And those little black ants were crawling in through those little cracks and crawling into his helmet, crawling into his arm, crawling into his legs, crawling all inside, that he was all over itching and tickling, till they were even in his pants. Ironhead looked, and all he could see was ants running around the floor, heading straight for him. He wouldn't wait another second. He turned and fled, and went out into the open air, where his army were waiting for him. When they saw him, a great cheer went up. But then Ironhead dropped his axe. He started to shake his head and waggled his arms and shake his legs, and he was jumping and shaking, because those ants weren't just itching and tickling. They were biting and nipping and biting and nipping all over him, in his head and his pants and his socks and his legs and his arms and his back. The army couldn't believe their eyes. Here was Ironhead, the greatest general in the world, acting like a clown, dancing around, waving his head, shaking his legs, throwing his stuff away, and he started to take off his armour. He took off his helmet. He started to take all the other bits and pieces from his armour. And while the army was staring at this sight before them, the little black ants, unseen by anybody, were crawling quietly out of the castle and crawling across the grass, and started to crawl up the legs of all the soldiers. And soon they were all itching and tickling and shaking their heads and throwing their swords away, throwing their spears away, throwing their bows away, anything to stop those itching, biting, tickling ants that were all over the army. And soon it was chaos. They were throwing their weapons away, they were taking off their armour, anything to stop this itching and biting and tickling that went on for hours. Well, after 7 days and 7 nights, the woodcutter looked up into the sky. He saw no flames, he saw no smoke, so he walked back through the forest. And when he came out of the forest, he could see that great mud castle standing up beside him. And he looked around on the ground, and there was armour and swords and bows and arrows and shields rusting in the grass. But shining bright was a magic axe, Ironhead's axe. "Well," said the woodcutter, "I think this belongs to me." So he picked it up and went back into the forest. And with this mighty axe that could chop down a tree with one blow, his life became a wonderful time. He could enjoy himself and chop down any tree he wanted and grow, if not rich, very comfortable. As for Ironhead and his army, they're probably still running, far, far away from the nipping, biting little black ants. Well, I hope that didn't make you too itchy and a little bit tickly. The greatest army in the world. Well, you decide which one it was. If you've enjoyed it, Share it with someone else. Bye.